Students, so today we are starting with a very important topic which is called as the giant nerve fibers. So last time we did the topic on nerve nets. So that was again a very important topic. Actually, nerve nets and giant nerve fibers, they are like a modification of the nervous system. And these modifications, they are actually helping in a very efficient impulse traveling throughout the body of the animal. Now, if we take the nerve nets first of all into account, as we have taken them in the previous lecture, the nerve nets, they are responsible for the overall expansion, or you can say the traveling of the nerve impulse throughout the body of the animal. And there is no central point in the case of the nerve nets because there was no cerebral ganglion as such there, or we can say that there is no brain as such in those cases. Now, if we talk about suppose we are talking about coelentrates, so there was no brain as such. There is no congregation of the neurons to form the brain. There is no formation of the cerebral ganglion as such. So we don't have a cephalized kind of a nervous system in those cases. So those nerve nets, those were diffused kind of systems, and they are present to like ramify the whole of the body wall of that animal. Just in the case of medusa, if we take jellyfishes into account. So I have given a very important diagram in the edu site, if you have seen, that is showing you the different animals with nerve nets. So if you take the case of metridium, if you are taking the case of medusa or jellyfishes, they are the animals which are not having a particular brain. So there are some sensors which are present in the body of those animals, and those sensors are sensing the environment, and the nerve net is helping them to like transport all the impulses throughout the body up to the, you can say, the muscles of the animal. So the final responses that is shown by the animal are under the control of those nerve nets. Now, on the other side, we have the second topic that we are taking right now in today's lecture is the giant nerve fibers. Now, giant nerve fibers are so called because they are giant in size. They have got huge sizes. They can be huge in length, or they can be huge in the diameter of the nerves. So if I take it as a whole, the giant nerve fiber system. So giant nerve fiber systems, they are also called as the neurocords. Neurocords. So neurocords, they are basically of two types. The first type is, it is called as the simple neurocords. So simple means that they have very large single nerve cells. It is composed of a single cell which is very large in size because its axon part, the long axon part, is quite long. So that's why it is composed of a single cell with a very long axon, and that's why it is called as a simple giant nerve fiber or a simple neurocord. Now, if I take the second type, the second type is a compound giant nerve fiber. Now, why it's called as a compound giant nerve fiber? Because it is composed of multiple structures. It is a congregation of multiple structures. So each axon, it has got like numerous neurons, and each axon of the neuron, it is connected to numerous cell bodies. So that means it is just like a network, it is just like a plexus kind of a thing, and that is making your compound giant nerve fibers. So basically saying they can be very simple giant nerve fibers of a single neuron with a long axon. They can be a mesh-like giant nerve fibers which are quite long, but it is made up of multiple cells. Now, if I go further, the reflex behavior, if I take the reflex behavior of the animals, this is dependent upon the neurons of that particular animal. And those neurons which are controlling the reflex actions, they are the giant neurons, or they may be giant nerve fibers. So the large nerve cells that give rise to the giant nerve fibers, they are actually modified kind of nerve cells. So they can be modified to have long axons, or they can be modified into having a network in between different giant neurons. So the giant neurons, actually their nervous character, it has been established in 1900. So some of the scientists, they were saying that these are not neuronal in origin, but their neuronal origin was, you can say, confirmed in 1900. So they are containing a special structure which is called as the neurofibrillae. So these neurofibrillae, they are actually the you can say the protrudings of the nerve cells, which are the giant protrudings. That's why they are called as the giant nerve fibers. Now the giant nerve fibers, they are of two types on the basis of that they have, either they have the myelin sheaths or not. So scientists, they have found that giant nerve fibers are commonly myelinated. So they have myelin sheaths, but they can be without the myelin sheaths also. Now students, the giant nerve cells, if a neuron is big in size and they are making connections with the other cell bodies, the axon of a single neuron is connecting to a cell body of the next neuron, and the axon of the next is going for the next cell body, and that will make a nerve fiber. So the giant nerve cells, they are making giant nerve fibers. Now if I talk about the animals in which these giant nerve fibers are found, they can be like the most important animals to have the giant nerve fibers are the arthropods. They are also the annelids. They can be polychaetes. They are oligochaetes, just like earthworm. They can be mollusks. They do have giant nerve fiber systems. And hemichordates are also found to have the giant nerve systems. Now students, there is a comparison in between the, you can say, the diameter of the giant nerve fibers. Now if I take a particular nerve fiber of a typical vertebrate, so this is just reaching like 20 to 30 microns in diameter. So if I like take it in a simple language, the diameter of the nerve of a vertebrate, a typical vertebrate, it will go from 20 to 30 micrometer. Now if I take a giant nerve fiber of a mollusk, suppose, then it can reach up to like 600 micrometers. So this is the difference. So here you are having like 20 to 30 micrometers in diameter in a vertebrate, and in the case of the invertebrates, it may reach up to 600 micrometers the diameter. So that's why they are called as the giant nerve fibers, because they are huge in diameters. They are quite thick in diameter. Now students, we will be taking some of the animals to go through these giant nerve fibers and what is the functioning of these fibers. So first of all, I am taking the example of the earthworm. Now students, in earthworm we have 3 giant nerve fiber in the case of the nerve cord of the earthworm. Now we all dissect the earthworm. Earthworm has got a nerve cord in the center. We all know this. And that nerve cord has got a number of nerve fibers. But out of these nerve fibers, only 3, they are the giant nerve fibers. That means giant nerve fibers are present in the nerve cord and they are 3 in number. One giant nerve fiber, it is present in the center of the nerve cord. It is median and 2 are lateral in position. So that is the positioning of the giant nerve fibers in the case of the earthworm. So they are also called as the neurocords, as I've told you earlier. So earthworm has got 3 neurocords, and earthworm, it can show a very strong response or a reflex response in with the help of these giant nerve fibers. Now how? What is the mechanism that these 3 giant nerve fibers they go through? So if you touch the anterior end of the earthworm, what will happen? The anterior segments of the earthworm will contract as such in just a few milliseconds. And this reflex action is due to the median giant nerve fiber. Only the median. That means the median giant nerve fiber of the earthworm is connected to the anterior sensory cells. So if you touch the anterior part of the earthworm, only the median giant nerve fiber is stimulated, and that will contract the earthworm. Now on the contrary, if I touch the posterior end of the earthworm with a needle, or I prick it with a needle, what will happen? The 2 lateral giant nerve fibers will be activated, and that will be resulting in the whole body contraction of the earthworm in just a few milliseconds. So this is a response due to the lateral giant nerve fibers. So that is the difference. And scientists, they also have shown that these 3 nerve fibers, they are conducting impulses in a particular direction, and that is a very, very important thing. The median giant nerve fiber, which is present in the center, it is taking the impulses from anterior part to the posterior part, and there is no mechanism in which the impulses can travel vice versa from posterior to anterior. No, they cannot travel. On the contrary, the lateral giant nerve fibers, the 2 lateral giant nerve fibers, they are conducting impulses from the posterior end towards the anterior end, as they have only the connection with the posterior sensory cells. So that is the case of the earthworm. Now students, if I take the case of the polychaetes, if you take the case of the nereis, so here the giant fibers, they are usually continuous. So they are without any septa, and they may be unicellular. That means they can be single-celled. So single cell can be so long, and that will be regulating the, you can say, the reflex actions of the animal. Now, there is a case of hemichordates. If I take the hemichordates into account, for example, so there is a particular system which is made up of different cells of different sizes, and this particular system, there is no particular name for this system of the cells, but if I take them into account, this is a group of cells which are specialized, and from this particular system of the cells, Giant nerve fibers, they arise towards the anterior side, and giant nerve fibers, they arise to the posterior side also. So that means this system of the cells is present somewhat in the center of the body, and from this system giant nerve fibers, they are arising towards the mouth and towards the tail part. So this is a kind of system, and this is very, very equivalent system to an earthworm. So students, that was about the hemichordates, if I talk about. Then if I talk about the nerve impulse propagation, what is the speed of the propagation? So it is exceptionally rapid in the cases of these animals, the invertebrates. So that may reach up to 25 meters per second. So this is a huge speed as per the conduction of the impulse is concerned. So that may reach 25 meters per second. And they are very, very fast in the case of the crustaceans. Now, in the case of the lumbricus, I am taking one more example. In lumbricus, the giant nerve fibers, they mediate end-to-end twitches. So that is again a reflex kind of a response. So the lumbricus, as it is an annelid, so the end-to-end twitch reflex action is mediated by the giant nerve fibers. So that can bring about the rapid end-to-end contractions. So the longitudinal muscles of each segment, they contract at the same time. Now, how it is possible? Now, if you have a segmented body, suppose of lumbricus or the earthworm, or you take any of the annelid, what will happen? That the muscles of each of the segment will contract at the same time. Now, how is it possible that that all the segments, they contract at the same time? It is only possible because of the giant nerve fibers. Because the impulse, it travels so fast that it can reach to each and every segment in a millisecond. So that's why the whole of the animal can contract together from end to end due to these systems. Now, if I talk more about the systems, now I am taking some of the examples of the animals which are having the giant nerve fibers. Now, first example is of Aphrodite. Now, this particular animal, the Aphrodite, is having no giant nerve fibers. It has been seen that it has got no giant nerve fibers. Second, Arenicola. So the family members of Arenicola, they have got the giant nerve fibers. So as the Arenicola, it has got one giant nerve fiber. Next example is Neanthes. Now Neanthes has got many giant nerve fibers. Still, the scientists, they are finding that how many exact total number of giant nerve fibers the Neanthes has. But they are saying that they have got, Neanthes has got many giant nerve fibers. So that is the case of some of the animals with the number of the giant nerve fibers they are concerned. Now students, now I am talking about a particular animal which is called as the Myxicola. Myxicola. Now Myxicola, it has got one giant nerve fiber in the nerve cord. Now every animal has got a nerve cord, and these animals, the Myxicola especially, it has got only one giant fiber. And this giant fiber in the nerve cord, it is having a diameter of 560 micrometers. It is a very huge giant fiber, and that is present in the nerve cord. And the most important thing in the Myxicola is that this giant fiber, it can conduct the impulse in either of the direction. The impulses can travel from anterior to posterior or posterior to anterior. So this is the beauty of this particular fiber in the case of Myxicola. Now if I compare the Myxicola with earthworm, in earthworm there is no single giant nerve fiber in which the impulse is bidirectional. It has got no fiber with bidirectional impulse traveling. But in the case of Myxicola, we have a single fiber with a bidirectional impulse traveling. So in the case of Myxicola, very low frequency stimulations, if you have got some electrophysiochemical experiment done with the Myxicola, so very low frequency stimulations can give a fatigue response in the case of Myxicola. So that is again a very important, you can say, finding, that the giant nerve fiber, though it is very good at diameter with 560 micrometers diameter, but still it can get fatigued if repeated low frequency stimulations are given. So that means that it is a very similar kind of a mechanism to our muscles. So this also gets fatigued. And high frequency stimulation, if we give the high frequency stimulations, that relieves the fatigue. So that is a very important finding again. So if you give low frequency stimulations in repetition, the giant nerve fiber will get fatigued. And if you give high frequency stimulation, it relieves the fatigue. So it will come out of the fatigue. So this process, the scientists, they have termed it as facilitation. Facilitation refers to the coming out of the fatigueness of the giant nerve fiber, and that is with the high frequency stimulations. So students, that was the case of the Myxicola, and I hope that that sounds good to you when I am discussing some of the animals with you. So that was that was a basic concept about the giant nerve fibers and their presence, their conductivity, their speed of conductions, their function in the reflex actions or the responses of the animals. So I hope you have got the speed of conductions, their function in the reflex actions or the responses of the animals.